Welcome to Corrective Consciousness episode 206, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And we have another wonderful episode here on the Sega corporation we love so much. So this will be part 4 of our series here, and we're going to basically be going over the end of the Dreamcast and what Sega had to do after that.
I think we can talk about their next console release and skip straight to 2020.
You mean the Dreamcast 2?
No, I mean the Game Gear Micro. Let's just skip like over a decade's worth of history and go to the next console.
Let's just go on. But so we talked about some of the most prominent and best Dreamcast games to still play these days. I would say that most of the long-form games, like all the best RPGs and like adventure games and things like that, you know, Shenmue, Skies of Arcadia, Grandia 2, all the really big games in those respects, even Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, had been ported later on. But I definitely recommend a lot of the arcadey titles that never had any other chance.
You know what was never ported? Sword of the Berserk.
Honestly,
kind of mediocre, but it's interesting.
It's just kind of cool to see. There have been, 3 Berserk video games? There's been the Dreamcast one, the PS2
one, and the new one on PS4, the Dynasty Warriors game.
Yeah, the Warriors
Berserk
game.
and the Band of the Hawk, whatever the hell that means.
Yeah, the PS2 one's quite good for that era. I definitely recommend that one.
It takes you from after the 90s anime all the way to what I think was current at the time, which was the assaults on the old witch's house with all the apostles running in.
Yeah, I think it even got past Lady Fairness, which was
she joins your party.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh wait, well she's not like a special ability like Puck, Ishtoro, and Serpico is an ability, so that implies that she's with you. Yeah.
So that's some really cool stuff. That it got pretty far. It got a lot further than any anime had gotten to.
The anime stopped at the eclipse, and the PS2 game starts after the eclipse.
How about the second anime, the more current one?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know about that one either. I honestly don't have much interest in that because a lot of the fans of Berserk
was awful.
Yeah, a lot of the fans of Berserk have written it off.
Yeah, it's a damn shame.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing about Berserk is the art. The art is insane. I mean, the story's great too. It's really, really good, but the art is unparalleled.
It's painstaking.
I don't think you could find a better looking manga. Honestly, or more detailed manga.
The detail is absurd. It's
the amount of lines and that he would use.
Even on the small frames, it's not like wait till you see the 2-page spread. Every frame.
Yeah. But yeah, this game came into the U.S. even before any other Berserk thing really did, right?
Well, the Dreamcast game.
Yeah, the Dreamcast game.
Dreamcast was what, early 2000s?
It was 99 and 2000.
Okay, because the anime was somewhere in the 90s, so it was still relatively new to Westerners.
But had it been localized? That's the other question.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I remember us getting the Berserk OVA sets.
Well, that was college, yeah.
Yeah, in college. But I don't know when they came out. They were on DVD for a few years. But
wait
anyway.
A minute, you said you got which OVAs? The JoJo OVAs?
No, the Berserk ones.
Okay, the JoJo OVAs was college. Yeah, I don't know.
The Berserk ones is right around the same time because that's when I was buying stuff from Right Stuff.
Well, the Berserk OVAs, the Blu-ray stuff, that was definitely post-college. Those were only a few years old,
no.
I think.
I mean the series, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. The Berserk series, the original anime.
Yeah. The 3 movies, the Blu-ray ones, are relatively recent. The standard anime series, which was the only anime we had at that time, of Berserk. Yeah, that was... I remember, a friend of mine had that, I want to say, in high school or possibly college.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that was around 2004 is when we went into college. So
Yeah, we
um,
graduated in 2004. Yeah.
I probably got mine around 2010 is probably when I got my box set. But anyway,
Oh, that'd be post college. A
yeah.
friend of mine definitely had it before that, but I don't know the specific year.
Well, anyway,
About
Berserk
the
was
Dreamcast.
yeah, exactly. There was a lot of really good stuff, but unfortunately, towards the end of its life, it started to lose steam. Probably the like one of the more prominent adventure games, Shenmue 2, um, never got a U.S. release, which on the
Yeah,
Dreamcast.
we only
On
got
the
it on the original
Dreamcast.
Xbox. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big shame because the Dreamcast was very popular in the United States. In fact, it sold really well, particularly even though it didn't have EA properties. The Sega 2K sports titles were particularly good. Like the football game and the basketball game were actually very popular. They were giving EA a run for their money. In fact, the baseball one was less so, I think. But I'm not a huge sports fan, but like I do know that much from back then. Like there were quite a lot of people that bought those like 2K1 titles and 2K. And that was before 2K Games split off and became its own company. So I really thought that the Dreamcast was like the future because like the games on it were awesome. Nothing had looked that good yet. The PS2 wasn't out yet,
Yeah,
and
and
then
again, I mentioned this when I streamed it way back in the day, but if you look at the opening cutscene of Shenmue 1 with
it was
Londi fighting your
beautiful,
father,
beautiful.
that
Yeah,
still looks good.
yeah. In fact, I booted it up the other day on the Dreamcast Cast HDMI that I have,
Hmm.
and it's still beautiful. I mean, play the I would play the PS4 version these days, but
You may as well, especially because
yeah,
of the data transfer.
yeah. Not only that, but like yeah, it also has like right stick controls and things like
Yeah, and
that.
it's optimized for widescreen. You could save whenever you want. It's definitely got some quality of life
I think it's
improvements.
dual language support too, if I'm not
That sounds
mistaken.
right. I think you're right.
And you would have to hack that in. There was a fan hack for that. Because like the Japanese voices were pretty darn good.
Yeah, and the
Were a
English
lot better
voices
at.
were pretty darn robotic.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Rio! It's like, oh god, like
it
everyone talks like this.
it kind of had a charm to it though. Like it was just
Well,
like
yeah, to the point where on Shenmue 3 they still act like that, which I really did not expect. Like I saw video previews, I could not believe it. Like that is next level authenticity. That's like X-Men Welcome to Die with the new voice actors in the arcade game. They kept that on purpose. They did
yeah,
that for
that's
Shenmue
amazing.
3.
Yeah, I like that. But anyway, we were saying before, some of the best stuff was like the Sega arcade ports. Like you had Die Hard Arcade, Cannon Spike from Capcom, Power Stone 1 and 2. There were some really great late releases there. But when the PS2 came out, it pretty much just trounced the Dreamcast, especially in Japan. Like I said, the Dreamcast was actually very popular in the United States, actually probably more popular than in Japan. But when your home territory rejects it, you have limited time left. You know what I mean? And it's a shame because like the Saturn was very popular in Japan, and it was the opposite here. It wasn't popular in the United States. It was kind of a cult hit.
Well, and we also alluded to this before, but its release in the US was kind of just
It was terrible.
sabotage, so a bunch
Yeah,
of
it was
retailers
terrible.
just didn't have it. So it's not even like, oh man, fuck the Saturn. Like, I don't think I ever saw one on store shelves.
Yeah, it was one of those things where like the support wasn't there, and the U.S. branch of Sega did not handle
They
it
really
right at
fucked it
all.
up. Like
Yeah,
I had vaguely heard of it. I don't think I'd seen one in real life for way after it was dead.
and this was a huge shame that the Dreamcast just didn't make it in Japan because like as soon as the PS2 hit, the third party support completely dropped out. And the PS2 had something that the Dreamcast just didn't, which was it was more powerful hardware supposedly. I think that can be debated because like the Dreamcast games look really really good.
Yeah.
I think if people had been developing AAA Dreamcast games way way as long as people have been developing PS2 games, it would be giving them a run for their money. Something as good looking as Final Fantasy 12 or something like that, might have still been possible on the Dreamcast. But the PS2 had dual stick controls, which was a big deal. But the biggest deal was that it included a DVD player with its hardware.
Yeah, that was considerable, and so did the Xbox for that matter.
Yeah, but that was like the Xbox wasn't even out yet. There wasn't even a twinkle in their eye yet. So people had, just to try to give you an idea of what the climate was back then. People were ready for a successor to the VCR back then, and DVD and Laserdiscs just were so inconvenient that nobody wanted to deal with them. And so by this point, DVDs were starting to get traction, but the big problem was that DVD players were pretty damn expensive. You could, in order to pick up a decent one, it would be like $500-$600 at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like the Blu-ray player back in its day. The PS3 was, despite like the memes about how expensive it was the cheap way to go as far as getting a Blu-ray player was concerned.
Yeah. So if you bought a PS2 back then, it was $400. So already a lot of people just bought a PS2 just to get a DVD player. I mean, and it was a good DVD player too. It had good video quality. It was easy to control. You could buy a remote for it. You could do all those things.
And not to mention, speaking of good video quality, I don't know about, because there are various DVD players, but the PS2 had RGB and component support as well. So if your TV did, then you're in good shape.
Yeah, component right off the bat. Dreamcast, in order to get the best picture out of it, it's a big pain in the ass.
Dreamcast, well, I mean, yeah, I guess Europe had RGB, but Americans didn't. The best Americans could do was S-Video.
Well, no, you could do VGA with the.
I forgot about VGA, but VGA is a whole other beast. Like, that's just like.
That's what I mean. It was a big pain in the ass.
We could do that. It just sucked. Yeah. Not to mention, different games may or may not be compatible with it. So if you had it set to VGA, you'd have to like, I want to play this game now. Oh, it doesn't support VGA, so you gotta like swap out the cable. Like, really, it was a nuisance. I think we've mentioned this before, but like with the PS2, if you had component cables in, and you wanted to play a game that only goes up to 480i, okay, fine. It only goes up to 480i. Like, you don't have to switch your composite cables in.
In fact, we haven't had a good video solution for the Dreamcast that was like automatic and worked with everything until like this year, last year.
Yeah, the HDMI thing, like last year, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Once the HDMI mod came out, you could play anything and have it look good, and not have to worry about like manually switching anything over or anything like that. But it was just one of those things. But you could buy a Toro, which worked out really well for a while there, but you still had certain games that you had to futz with. The DC HDMI rules over everything. It's really really good. But so here's the thing about Dreamcast. It was well beloved by the people that had it, even though it was dying out. Another thing that hurt the Dreamcast was that it was a system that was heavily pirated at the time that it was around. During the era in which the system was still producing games.
Yeah, from what I remember, like the system, it was very difficult to find out, like at first, like how to pirate it. It had very good security, but once people cracked it, it became one of the easier systems to pirate for.
Yeah, I remember back in the day. In fact, only until about recently, the only cracks of games that you would find around were from that era, because what hackers would have to do is, because the Dreamcast had a proprietary it had a proprietary medium. It was on the GD-ROM, which was a gigabyte CD. It was slightly bigger than a CD. A CD is what, like 800 megs, something like that, 750 megs.
You're talking DVD, right?
No, CDs.
CD? Okay.
CDs are like, let me see here.
Well, 700 sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's something like 700 megs. Okay. I have some burnable
that's right.
CDs in front of me.
DVDs break a gig. Okay. Yeah.
So no, DVDs are like 4 gigs. So GD-ROMs GD-ROMs were like right in the middle, and the reason why they went with GD-ROMs is because they were like, okay, well, if we make a proprietary file disk format, it'll be harder to pirate games, and that was true.
Yeah, and it was until it wasn't.
But what the hackers ended up doing was they would go into the game's files and remove what they thought wasn't necessary for things to go on. If it was a particularly big game that used up most of the GD-ROM, what they would do is they would delete like music and stuff like that, music tracks. So you would have like Sonic Adventure 2. You could find it and you could play it, but like it might not play the music.
The thing with Sonic Adventure 2 is that like the music is one of the best parts of the game.
Yeah, the style of those games.
Sonic's music has always been one of its most outstanding features. But but that reminds me, I think I've mentioned this before when I was trying to talk about how to get like Forbidden Siren 2 to run on the PS2 if I wanted to burn it because it's too big.
Yeah.
You'd have to like, if you wanted to burn it to a regular DVD, you'd have to like go into the game files and delete like the extra languages.
Yeah, like Italian and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But people would do that back then, and I had friends that were into that scene. I was not one of those people. I was a goody two shoes. I used to buy my games, but like I had friends that were into that scene, and it was a shame because like a system that was already floundering like or had another hit against it.
Yeah, now people are pirating. And the funny thing is, it got to a point where like I've seen freeloader discs sold for it, but like at this point, you don't even need that. You can like burn and download your own freeloader disc.
Yeah.
It's like even
like the CDX
easier.
disc. They called it a boot disc. But yeah, it was just one of those things. It was a big shame. Dreamcast also had, I forgot to mention this, it had the VMU, which was the memory unit, virtual memory unit.
See, I also thought it was virtual, but it's visual memory unit.
Visual memory unit, okay. So unlike most memory cards, it had its own screen on it, and you could carry it around kind of like a Tamagotchi. It had things that you could do on it, like you could do, delete files and stuff like that, and do timekeeping and things like that. Basic functions.
And there are also some extremely basic mini games you could play on some of them.
Yeah. So Power Stone had a few fun games. There's even like a little shmup you could play. There was also like for Sonic Adventure 1, you had the Chow Garden. You could do a Tamagotchi kind of thing with the Chow.
And Skies of Arcadia had little mini games. If you talk to Pinta, like about the 3 statues, that was lost in the GameCube version. Like you just the statues were pointless. You could just sell them for a bunch, I guess.
Yeah, but it was a cool, novel idea. I mean, I remember carrying mine around and having a lot of fun with it. You could even do like certain battle games, so you could have 2 VMUs hook up with each other.
And I've mentioned this on a video of mine, but like it was for Resident Evil 2 and I think 3. It was sort of like a prototype of what the DS remake of Resident Evil 1 would become, where it would monitor your bullet count and your health, so you didn't have to go to the inventory screen to see what it was. You could always see what it was and then deal with healing and reloading when you knew you had to, instead of guessing. Like, I mean, at least with Resident Evil 2, your character would change posture, but with Resident Evil 1, you, like, do not know what your health is just by looking at your character on the screen. So, like, the DS version of that would tell you on the other screen. So, like, on the Dreamcast, they would tell you you're in fine or caution or danger status on the VMU. It was pretty great.
Yeah, there were a lot of novel things they ended up doing. At the very least, they would put like cool little logos and stuff while you were playing. And
I remember for Dino Crisis, you see like the T-Rex head sometimes, like when, I think probably when it shows up. But it's like, oh, look at that.
It was a lot of fun. Another thing about the Dreamcast is a lot of people don't remember this, is that they kind of had a partnership going with the Neo Geo Pocket Color at the time. So they kind of did that in order to make sure that they had like a pocket equivalent. So Sega even made Sonic Pocket Adventure for the Neo Geo Pocket Color, which is basically a port of Sonic 2, kind of. But they also had a bunch of games. They had the Dreamcast to Neo Geo Pocket Color link cable, where you could link up with, I think, King of Fighters and Marvel vs. Capcom.
That is an extremely specific piece of hardware.
Yeah. It's basically made for me and no one else. And I don't even own one. I think they're very expensive these days. But yeah, but it just confirms that there was an intention to kind of partner with SNK in order to have a pocket system as well as the console hardware. And both of them failed, unfortunately, and they were both great, very good systems that failed. It's a big shame. So I forget what the last Dreamcast game, last official.
That I don't know.
Mainline Dreamcast game. Here's the thing about the Dreamcast is, it had a lot of people that really loved it. There were a lot of companies that were still making Dreamcast games well after the system had died.
Some game I've never heard of called Karos.
Okay.
It might have been Japan only.
Yeah, it was Japan only. So a lot of these games were made. It was a milestone shmup. The makers of Redirji and Chaos Field. But I think the last U.S. one was Razor Freestyle Scooter. Okay. There we go. So, it kind of went out with a whimper in the United States, but in Japan they had like games that were made into much later. So let me see here. When was Karos made?
2007.
2007. Yeah, way later than the system had died, and this was an official game. It was officially licensed and everything.
Yep.
And I remember there being quite a few really good ones. Another one was called Cosmic Smash. That was a post-mortem game.
One thing I see for I'm looking up a list of system swan songs, and for the Dreamcast it says Border Down in 2003.
Okay, so Border Down was a Japanese shmup that was made by G-Rev or Grev. They were the company that ended up making Senko no Ran later on. Do you remember that title?
I remember the title, yeah.
Senko no Ran is like that bullet hell shmup fighting game where you're like in mechs and you like attack each other. Grev also made Gradius 5 is probably what they're most famous for. So anyway, this system had some really great post-mortem games too. Like if you were a shmup fan, Cosmic Smash was a cool Naomi arcade port. I think that was one of the last games that Sega themselves had made and ported. So basically that game was like 3D Breakout, but like it was very stylized. It looked kind of like Rez, but you played. Your character basically played like squash or racquetball, and the idea was that you were supposed to smash all of the bricks, kind of like in a 3D version of Breakout. It was a lot of fun. It was actually a really fun game. Then there was Under Defeat, which was another G-Rev game, I think, and that was a lot of fun. That was a shmup where you're two helicopters, and that game eventually got ported to PS3. And then there were like the three milestone games, Redirji, Karos, and Chaos Field, and there was also Trizeal somewhere in there. Was one of those, but yeah. And then even after that, fans continue to make games for this system to this day.
Yep.
I think Pierre Solar got a version on here recently. Xeno Crisis just got one.
Crisis.
Like, yeah, Xeno
I was thinking
Crisis
Xeno
just
Clash. I couldn't put the title in my head.
Xeno Crisis, which is a Switch game, and a Genesis game. They just put out the Dreamcast version just recently. There were a bunch of shmups made for it, like Ducks and Redux. These were all fan ones, so like they ran on CDs, not GD-ROMs, but like it wasn't like exactly pirating because you were buying something from somebody who made it. There was Fast Striker. And most of these games ended up getting more modern ports if you wanted to play them that way. But it's still cool that there was some kind of support behind and excitement behind making a lot of Dreamcast games. Friend of the show. One of my friends actually made a game called Wind and Water Power Battles, which was a lot of fun. It was a puzzle game. I don't know if you remember that one, but
I remember bringing it up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in fact, one of my articles that I wrote for Silicon Era back in the day ended up getting linked on Kotaku about that game, which is pretty cool. There's a Kotaku article about yours truly, which was pretty cool. But anyway, unfortunately during this time, and there was also Sega Gaga in Japan as well, right around this time.
That's right. Yeah.
I think that was a mail order only game because it was kind of like the swan song of Sega, and that one unfortunately has never gotten a complete fan translation or anything like that. And it's a shame because it's like an RPG about trying to save Sega while they're dying, while it's happening. I can't believe they were able to make and had a budget and were able to work on this game. It's pretty insane. And everybody at the company's sad and downtrodden. It's like you made a parody, but it's not really a parody. It's like that's what's going on. Yeah. But big shame there. So what ended up happening is that Sega decided to go third party, which means that instead of producing their own hardware like they always had, they were going to start publishing games on their rival systems, the same rivals that killed them.
And like all three of them too.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was it was PS2, and then the GameCube happened after that, and then the Xbox happened after that. And right around that time, they started putting out plans to basically support all of them in one form or another. I would looking back at it, the most impressive and beloved games ended up being on the Xbox. But there are some really good post Dreamcast games on the GameCube as well.
Especially and I think it was more like Genesis titles on the PS2 until they started doing original IPs.
Yeah, so in terms of what actually landed on the PS2, Virtua Fighter 4 was a big one.
They had Sega Ages stuff.
They had Sega Ages stuff. 4, yeah. They ported Crazy Taxi and 18-wheeler at the time through the help of Acclaim.
Did PS2 get a Crazy Taxi?
Yes, it did.
Oh, I just remember Xbox getting that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty darn sure if I remember it. Crazy Taxi 1 got on the PS2 and GameCube.
Excuse me, Crazy Taxi 3 was on Xbox.
Crazy Taxi 3 was an Xbox exclusive and still is, for that matter. When the GameCube got announced, it actually they came to the forefront. And Sega announced that they were going to have games within its launch window, including the Super Monkey Ball. And that was like a big launch title for that system. And it's still a beloved title to this day. And in fact, they recently remade that title. It's like Super Monkey Ball 1 and 2 are beloved titles and sold really well. And eventually the PS2 and Xbox got ports of those as well. But most people...
they didn't have that extra level that was just on a GameCube.
On a GameCube, yeah. What's kind of funny about that is, like, even though those later systems ended up getting it, everybody remembers them being on the GameCube.
That's true.
And it's one of those things. And eventually they got a Skies of Arcadia port, which that's how I ended up beating the game. I played it a lot,
same.
the Dreamcast version a lot, but the GameCube is where I finished the game.
Yeah, the GameCube has like all the DLC content on it, because that game had DLC in the Dreamcast. The GameCube has all of it, plus 3 things that are unique to the GameCube, which is 1 extra discovery, 1 extra boss fight, and 1 extra weapon for Vice if you can become Vice the Legend, which basically means doing like everything right.
But there were also some other titles. I mean, there was Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg is a cult hit, and also a lot of Dreamcast ports got to the GameCube that ended up being really great.
The aforementioned Sonic Adventure games, as well as, this is also Xbox, but Phantasy Star Online Episodes 1 and 2, although I believe GameCube exclusively got Phantasy Star Online 3. That wasn't a
Correct.
Dreamcast port, but that was a...
It was called Episode 3, actually.
Episode 3, Card Revolution, yeah.
Yeah, because PSO2 is a different game. Of course, that's actually what's...
Yeah, it's Phantasy Star Online 1, Episode 3, I guess. Because Episodes 1 and 2 are just Phantasy Star Online. And it's not Phantasy Star Online 2.
The GameCube exclusively got Phantasy Star Online 1 and 2 Plus, which is an upgrade.
That's right, that was a later release of 1 and 2. I just have the regular release of 1 and 2.
Yeah, the Plus one is hard to find. It's one of the rarest games for the system, especially in the US. I'm lucky enough to own a copy of that. And was it Virtua Quest?
Yes.
They ended up making that.
That was going to be the Virtua Fighter RPG, just like Shenmue was going to be the Virtua Fighter RPG.
Yeah, no, it even has Akira in it and everything.
Yep. Speaking, by the way, I'm deviating a little bit, but speaking of Virtua Fighter, or not Virtua Fighter RPG, but speaking of like Shenmue and stuff like that, like, what if the game played like well? And then Yakuza was released on PS2.
Yeah. So, I forgot. PS2 had a lot of really great Sega games, too. I mean, not only did it have Virtua Fighter 4 and Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution, but it also had Yakuza 1 and 2.
Yep, Yakuza 1 and 2. Well, Yakuza 1 was dub only, though. It was only in English. And they played up how much swearing there was in it. I was surprised when I played Yakuza 2, there was like zero
fuck all
swearing.
The time, constantly.
Yeah, all the time. What the fuck? Like, as a guy runs at you to attack you, whereas in Japan, it would be something like, you know, oh, like, what are you doing here? Or something like that. Like, you want to go punk, instead of like, what the fuck? Like, they really swore up a storm on the English version, including Mark Hamill as Majima.
Oh, yeah.
That was a little weird.
And it's kind of funny. Somebody brought that up to him on Twitter recently. He's like, I don't even remember doing that.
Yeah, and honestly, why should he? Like, I mean, I know that Majima is an immensely popular character now. There's been over 10 Yakuza games. Like, not the number titles, but there's been over 10 games called Yakuza. And Majima's, like, a very popular character in just about all of them. But Mark Hamill only ever voiced him once. It was basically a bit part in Yakuza 1. And the game's fucking 15 years old. Like, what do you want? He had a few lines in that game. Like, why would he remember Majima?
His performance was good, though. I did enjoy it. But some of the best Sega stuff from this era ended up being on the original Xbox. In fact, one of the reasons why I got an original Xbox at around launch is I was so excited because not only...
Jet Grind Radio?
Well, yeah, Jet Set Ready Future was a launch window game, and I wanted Halo and that game were like on my top priority.
Halo just like killed.
Halo was a fucking great game.
Yeah,
fucking great game. That the Xbox brand would not exist without Halo. It was so good that like people bought the system just to play Halo.
And also this is deviating, but like, remembering that this is the era where GameCube and PS2 were current gen, the fact that you could play Doom 3 on a console, on Xbox, that like, what? Like, that was like a computer melter when it first came out.
So it's kind of hard to put into words like how good the original Xbox looked compared to anything else before it. And a lot of the games on the original Xbox still look good.
Well, yeah, the thing is, like,
they were
GameCube could
really
only go
good
up
looking.
to like GameCube could only go up to 480p if you had the proprietary component cables. The PS2 could go up to 1080, but extremely rarely.
1080i,
1080i, and
not P.
720 pretty rarely. But the Xbox has a bunch of games that can just do 720 like it's nothing.
Almost all of them actually go up to 720p,
Yeah.
which is excellent. And right out of the box, you don't have to modify it or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of games have widescreen modes.
Yep.
This was before HD televisions were very prominent, but they were starting to gain traction.
Yeah, but
So
the PS2 you could set the system to widescreen, but like how many games were
barely
really
any,
ready for it? And
barely
the
any.
GameCube, I think you had to like secretly hold like the B button when it turns on or
Oh,
something.
that was for 480p.
Oh, that
480,
was okay. That's
yeah,
what it was. All right.
480p is the highest that GameCube can do.
I think you had to do it with the PS2 as well, like hold some button to get 40p
It's
options.
not even worth it. I mean, like the games that can go higher than 240p on PS2, almost all of them have like ports. Like one of the more prominent, like really good-looking games was Final Fantasy 12. I mean, there's modern ports of that game
Yeah, it's
that look
modern now.
beautiful.
But like at the time though, I remember looking at this is before the port came out, but I remember seeing on YouTube, like I was looking up a list of the summon attacks for Final Fantasy 12 because they look really cool, and I saw a video called like all the summons in 1080. I was like, how is this possible? Like I forgot that the game could do that.
I think Valkyrie Profile 2 may be like
Yes,
the
that
only
was one of
game
the
that's
very
like
rare games that could go up
locked
to
to the
1080.
system that still looks that good in
And
1080i.
I think we mentioned this before, but one of the Gran Turismo games, I think.
Yeah, Gran Turismo 3, I think. But yeah,
Yeah,
but
Valkyria Profile 2, just weirdly, that game could do it.
yeah, that was a very late game for
Yeah.
PS2. But after that, that wasn't the only that Jet Set Radio Future was not the only thing that Sega had going for it, because after the Naomi board fell out of prominence in the arcade, there was the Chihiro board, which was
Oh,
the
yes.
Xbox-based one, but they made it in collaboration with Sega, I believe. So there were several games that Sega partnered with Microsoft in order to make arcade games, and then they ended up porting almost all of them except for I think there are 3 games, something like that, 3 Chihiro board games that didn't make it. One of the most prominent being Virtual Cop 3, which is the big
Yeah.
shame. Unfortunately, Virtual Cop 3, if you want to play that, you have to modify your OG Xbox.
Yeah, like the thing with the Xbox is that there are several versions of it, and if you crack open an Xbox, which by the way is not very easy to do, like they kind of hid the screws and everything, but if you want to crack open your Xbox and look at the chips, you'll find out that like there's only room for the chips they have. But if you have like an early Xbox, you'll see that there are 2 RAM chips in there, but there are spaces for 2 more. So if you buy those 2 chips, which should probably cost you about like 5 to 10 cents
Pennies.
a piece,
Pennies.
like literally, if you buy those chips and you like solder them in and convince your Xbox to accept them, then you could double the Xbox's RAM to, I forgot what, like how many megs was it, like 64 or 128 or something?
I don't know. I forget.
Like it's double whatever it would have been, and then you can run those games off of it. But if you have like a new Xbox, there are not slots for those RAM chips, so you have to like look up the right version on the underside of the console.
But they had lots of other games like that ended up being prominent on the OG Xbox. There was Sega GT 2002 that ended up being really good. Jet Set Radio Future is still one of my favorite games, and I really wish we had an easy way to play it. You could play it on the backwards compatible backwards compatibility on the Xbox 360, but it's very glitchy. I don't
and
recommend
you still
playing
need
it
the
that way.
disc anyway. Like, you can't go on Steam. Steam has Jet Set Radio, the Dreamcast game.
Yeah, they actually ended up remaking the original game, but they never remade the second one, which
And
is a big shame.
speaking of the second one, by the way, a rare Charles Martinet role that is not
Yeah, it was the
Mario.
back with the police officer.
Yeah, he's like whoever the final boss is.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when it's like, you're not gonna stop me, like you can kind of hear the Wario in it a little bit. It's like, oh wow.
But yeah, around that same time was Gun Valkyrie, which was not a very good game, but it looked beautiful. It still looks beautiful, in fact. But then after that, we started to get some really good classics. You had Panzer Dragoon Orta, which is one of my favorite games of all time. I love that game. It's playable on the Xbox One, and it will be playable on the Xbox One X. I mean Series X. It is a fantastic, great playing and looking game. It is a treasure. I love it. Love it.
So what game is that? Is that the fourth one?
That is the fourth Panzer Dragoon game, if you don't count Panzer Dragoon
Saga,
Mini.
Right?
Yeah, there's Panzer Dragoon Mini too.
I mean, there is, but what? Don't forget the
Game Gear game.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't forget the portable Suikoden games that are only in Japan. Like, all right.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the idea. It is a fantastic game. I love the music. It's still a beautiful looking game, even by today's standards. Like a lot of the games that Sega put out during this time period were some of their best looking games ever, and as a result, they still look good. Like they just, the artistic direction in conjunction with what you could do with the system that was that powerful at the time, actually make it look timeless as a result. And it's a very beautiful game. What else did they put out during that era? They had quite a few games. This is another beautiful title and a Chihiro game. We talked about Crazy Taxi 3, but there was also Outrun 2, which is one of the most beautiful looking games ever made.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, was that like wasn't there also like the Outrun like 2006 or whatever it was called?
Yeah, so they updated it later with Outrun Coast to Coast or Outrun 2006. It is one of the most fun arcade games I've ever played, and the home port is like arcade perfect. It's beautiful. It's amazing. And I really wish that was backwards compatible, but they only make backwards compatible games that they can sell, and that game has a Ferrari license, so they can't sell it, unfortunately.
Oh, and not that America ever touched this, but they also made like Rent-A-Hero for Xbox.
Oh yeah, so that one they didn't end up finishing, they ended up finishing it but never published it.
Okay.
So there is an official translation of an English translation of Rent-A-Hero that was a Dreamcast game originally, Rent-A-Hero number 1, which is a remake of the Genesis game, I think.
And I think we might have mentioned this before, but in Fighters Megamix, Rent-A-Hero is one of the playable characters, and Americans are like, "What is this?"
But yeah, they nowadays you can find a copy of that online. It leaked out. I mean, it's a complete game with an official translation, so it's definitely one of those titles that you want to seek out. But yeah, some really, really great titles on the original Xbox. I wish that the Virtua Fighter series had been on Xbox as well. I don't know the reasoning behind that. I don't know why.
Yeah, they just they were Genesis, Saturn, Dreamcast, and they just moved over to PlayStation, I guess.
Yeah,
PS2 and PS3.
Xbox had for fighting games, its prominent series was Dead or Alive 3, and then there was Dead or Alive. They remade Dead or Alive 1 and 2. They remade Dead or Alive 1 and 2 for the original Xbox.
Oh yeah, it came in like one of those double packages, those double boxes.
Yep. And they had Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball.
Extreme Beach Volleyball 1 and 2. Yeah.
But those are Tecmo games, so we're veering off the path here. But
okay.
Also on PS2, this wasn't as prominently expressed as a Sega game, but it absolutely was. This was the very first Sakura Wars, Sakura Tyson game.
Well, that was Saturn, wasn't it?
So the first one was on the Saturn, but the first one to have an official American or English translation,
PS2 and Wii
was PS2 and Wii, and it was the publisher was NIS, so they didn't put Sega's trademark on the front, but it's definitely on the back.
Yeah, that was like Farewell, My Love, or something like that, or Goodbye, My Love, or whatever it was.
Yeah, and this one is notable for taking place in the United States. So
yeah, I remember there's like a cowgirl on the cover or something.
Yeah, I think it's the fourth one, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that was another Sega title that ended up being a cult hit, for sure.
Definitely a cult hit, because we wouldn't see another Sakura Wars game until like this month.
Yeah, and it's a lot more popular now than it was
now
back
that more
then.
people have been talking about this giant series, we just don't get it all.
It's one of the most popular RPG series in Japan.
Yeah, it's like Fire
literally.
Emblem. Like, fine, we'll let you have it starting on the GameCube. Like, oh. Or maybe on the GBA or something.
Tokimeki Memorial, we've never gotten one of these titles, but they were gigantic monumental titles for the PC Engine that everybody played back then in Japan.
And Langrisser, there's a bunch of those, and the only one we ever got we didn't know was a Langrisser game.
Have you heard of High Score Girl, the anime?
I don't think so.
So there's an anime made by or published by Netflix right now that has real video games in it. That's kind of like its gimmick, is that it's about a boy and a girl growing up, but their common ground is playing Street Fighter 2 in the arcade. And they have actual footage from the games while they're playing it, and
much like Wiffy Ball has actual House of the Dead footage in House of the Dead.
No, but this is really cute. It's like a romance drama centered around arcade games that they play with each other.
Sure.
And they're real arcade games. They're all licensed. They're Taito games in there, Data East games, and mostly Capcom games, because it's centered around Street Fighter 2. But Sakura Tyson Tokimeki Memorial is actually in one of the episodes prominently, and it's just you need to learn how to talk to girls. This is what you need to play, kind of thing. So it was a big deal in Japan.
That just makes me think of the first Metal Gear Solid. This is one of my Japanese animes, and then it shows Police Knots, and we just assumed it was some anime series because we didn't have and still never got Police Knots.
First of all, not an anime.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not. It's a cutscene from another Kojima game that we never got. And then Twin Snakes came out, and I still didn't recognize the footage at the time, but it was Zone of the Enders 2.
Yeah. But I think we covered the immediate post Dreamcast era here. Of course, there's plenty more to go over. There's some really great games on the DS and 3DS that they ended up producing. Plenty
and
of
PS3,
great
baby. There's
PS3
and
real
360. Good stuff on the PS3.
PS3 and 360, and then we also get to the mergers. There's also merging with Sammy, and then later Atlas. Oh. So we have plenty more to talk about in terms of post Dreamcast Sega. So I'm willing to continue.
Yeah, I'm
to
up
talk
for it,
because
the PS3 had some of my favorite stuff in a long time from Sega.
Oh yeah. In fact, I think right now this era is the best Sega's ever been.
Yeah.
I'm just actually going to say it. Right now and that's saying from a lifelong Sega fan.
Just current Yakuza and Phantasy Star Online 2. Just those two games alone, even though I don't even really care about Phantasy Star Online 2, that's just killing it.
All the Sega Ages titles on the Switch, all of those games are preserving their legacy, and they're making it marketable, and they're selling them to people. They're
releasing stuff like Sega Flashback, that compilation of remember all these old games,
and their mini consoles.
Yeah, we do,
and their mini consoles too.
Yeah.
So they have tons of stuff going on. They also have their PC output. They have all of their Total War games that are still going strong. And also all their Atlas games are doing really well. This is a really, really good era for Sega, so I eventually want to get to it, because I don't think they've started to publish stuff that they've never published before, with the Sega Ages titles, like things that they've been sitting on for a long time, where people were like, for the longest time, I would refer to Sega as like that cousin that you really, really love but lets you down all the time. Because you love them for all the fun you had when you were little kids, but now they're a drug addict. They were, steal money out of your back pocket when you're not looking. Sega, like, also, like, everybody used to say this. Sega's slogan, "We hate money," because they used to not localize things that people wanted and all this other stuff.
Like Phantasy Star Online 2 for like a fucking decade.
And you can't say that about them right now. They localize everything, and they've been really good at it, and people love them.
And Yakuza's on like Xbox and Steam now.
Yeah, and everybody loves those games. They bring over every title now, they didn't used to. It was a big deal when we actually got Yakuza 3. We almost didn't get it at all. In fact, right around Yakuza 3 is right when the Sega was going to die again.
And that was a neutered version of Yakuza 3 besides.
Yeah.
To the point where, I forgot if I mentioned this, but did you ever read that article where somebody was interviewing 2 actual members of the Yakuza about Yakuza 3 and how realistic it was?
No, I didn't.
It's a legitimately good read, because they approved of the game. They're like, I feel like I've worked with some of these people in the game. But at the end of the article, the guy kind of offhandedly mentions the American localization and, like, how much stuff was cut from it.
Yeah.
So, like, the article ends with 2 real-life Yakuza, saying, like, oh, man, sucks for America that, like, they got like, like, actual Yakuza are, like, pitying Americans because of their version of Yakuza 3. It's like, oh.
Which didn't get rectified until, like,
this year.
Or
was it last year? But it's
whatever.
Very recent. I think it was this
like
year.
October, I think. October,
yeah, very recent.
Like yeah. All right, guys. Well, we should move on to fan stuff.
Yes.
But, like, we have plenty to talk about in terms of, like, Sega's disappointments, but then later triumph. Like, right now, like I'm saying, is the best Sega. It's so good right now.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, so for comments, Living Corpse left a few, so I'll read some of his comments here.
Please.
So it says, I'm going to wait for the second versions of the new systems to come out. They
tend to release them with...
I know. They tend to release them with problems consumers find, like Rings of Death, and then come out with a version 2.0 that has less issues. As for size, don't worry. Once they figure out how long the graphene superconductors last, we'll get smaller systems again, with smaller computers and laptops. Yeah, I mean, that is a thing. Like, Sony in particular has released slim versions of, like, every PlayStation. Well, I mean, like, look at PS2 slim next to PS2 fat. It's, like, under half the size.
They took a long time to release the Pro, though, this time around.
They did.
I wish they had released it maybe a year earlier, because I would have bought a Pro if I knew it was coming out, because... it was like 5 years into, like 4 or 5 years into the PS4. By the time I bought one, I bought one when Batman the Arkham Knight came out. Right around when I got mine, and by that point, like, Bloodborne had been cemented as like the game for the system.
Yeah.
But the Pro wasn't anywhere in sight. It was a couple years after that the Pro was even announced. So, I usually wait until the second one, but, like, they took a long time for the second version this time around, which is kind of unfortunate, because I would have upgraded if it was worth it. And I think it's pretty cool to have the Pro, but at this point I had a more prominent desktop, so
yeah.
I just played most of the titles that took advantage of it on my desktop.
Yeah. So another comment is about, like, the gun, the Sentinel-9, like, for Resident Evil guns. Since I brought up the Sentinel-9 in another episode, something that's always bugged me about Resident Evil 7 is how the new Samurai Edge pistol and the Thor's Hammer shotgun are officially known as Albert 01 and Albert 02. Yeah. It says, I mean, I get that he was working on them before he was killed and Blue Umbrella took over, and I get that they're powerful like him, But if they're really good guys, you'd think they'd change the names to not glorify a bioterrorist who nearly destroyed the world. And even if they are secretly evil and playing reformed good guys, not glorify the guy who betrayed everyone, including them. Yeah, Wesker betrayed Umbrella in the first game. He's like, I'm doing my own thing with this tyrant.
Yeah.
Fuck Umbrella.
It's like naming your ship the Columbus these days.
Yeah, it's like, well, you know. And then another one, going to Spider-Man PS4. Yeah, Mr. Negative is newish to Spider-Man. At the time the PS4 game came out, he'd been in the comics for 10 years, which is
10 years
new
in comics is new, yeah.
Yeah, since we can't keep using the same characters brought in 40 plus years ago, yeah, fair enough. And then one more comment.
To be fair, the main bad guy, Doc Ock, is like really good in that game. I love that version of Doc Ock.
And he's also one of Spider-Man's oldest villains. But one more comment. I don't know the pronunciation. Darth Nihilist. Well, not Nihilist, but Nihilist.
Yeah.
Darth Nihilist was a Sith. Nihilist. Sorry, I'm using real words. Was a Sith from one of the Knights of the Old Republic games. He became what's known as a wound in the Force. In a near-death experience, he started feeding off the souls or life force of others to save his own ass. But now he's constantly hungry and in pain and needs to consume more and more souls each time to stave it off.
Plasma. I need plasma.
So there's literally Force vampires in Star Wars.
Wow.
Really? Dude is arguably more destructive than the Death Star. He's cleared out entire planets by himself. That. I'm sorry, but that doesn't sound cool to me. That sounds corny. What if he was so powerful? He pretty much becomes a ghost as his body is gone, and all that's left is his cloak, mask, and lightsaber. That's kind of cool. And you cannot understand him when he talks, so it's so distorted. It sounds like the Void or Madness is talking. The heroes in the story couldn't even kill him. The best they could do was trap him in his mask like a spirit and bury it on some barren planet, hoping no one ever digs it up ever again. That's a cool story, but in my opinion, not a cool Star Wars story.
Isn't it better to cars him, just throw him into the void?
Cars him.
Yeah.
Eventually, he stopped thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
And then School Filmer left a comment. Two comments. I combined them. So now I did manage to save up to get Clubhouse games, and I'm having fun with it so far.
Good.
I do quite appreciate that this game has Riichi Mahjong. Yeah, what you could call Reichi, and Hanafuda as parts of the whole package. I mean, Nintendo's going to have Hanafuda.
It's so cool that they put that in there and teach you how to play it. That's so cool.
Yeah. I just love that little trivia fact.
I'm sure Shogi's in there too.
Yeah, but I mean Hanafuda especially because Nintendo.
Yeah.
I love that little trivia fact. I forgot if it was a year or two ago, but it's guess what, everybody? It's Nintendo's anniversary. Their 200th anniversary. What?
I just told my fiance, Nintendo's been around since the 1800s. She's like, doing what?
Yeah, making Mario games, obviously. All right, but so he says, since Riichi, Mahjong, and Hanafuda is parts of the whole package, especially since I could just take it on the go anywhere. As for lower res games, I do have a favorite there: Blaster Master Zero and its sequel.
Yeah.
The pixel art is quite nice, the gameplay is very good, the music is awesome if you love the Sunsoft bass lines.
They're also
the DLC
better
characters do play differently as well.
Yeah, and they're also better than the original. The original Blaster Master Zero is the original Blaster Master, the way you'd always wanted to play it, which is amazing.
Quality of life improvements, looks better, sounds better.
Yep.
So finally our question, which is also from School Filmer. Very basic question, but possibly difficult to answer. Favorite boss theme? It could be a normal boss theme, mini boss theme, final boss theme. Feel free to have several favorites. As for me, I feel bad about this because I only even recognize one of these. I enjoy Laughter from Phantasy Star 4. I'll Destroy Your Mind from Rusty, which is PC 98 or MS-DOS. Blooming Villain and Rivers in the Desert. Yeah, I only recognize Rivers in the Desert from Persona 5. The final boss themes from the Yokai Watch games, and of course, You Will Know Our Names from Xenoblade Chronicles. Those are my personal picks. I've only ever heard one of these, and it's still from a game I don't know. Yeah, this is a tough one because there's a lot of really just banger boss themes. I like Chrono Trigger's basic boss theme, that that's a good one. There's Nier's final boss, the Shadow Lord theme. That's one of the most iconic ones I've heard in a very long time. Sonic 3's
oh yeah, when you're in space. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, the oldest track that has a drop like doom doo 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 doo, like it's the one that starts off super slow and then just hits you. Oh, I had one in my head, and what was that? There was a theme that I had in my head. I actually know what the track is, but I forgot what it was from. Oh yeah, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest's boss theme and final boss theme. I say what you will about Mystic Quest. Its tracks are very good. FF6's boss theme is a classic. FF7, FF8, FF8's boss theme, Force Your Way. That's amazing. FF7's is rocking, but FF8 really just hits you just right. FF6 is a classic, and then there's obviously Dancing Mad and One Winged Angel.
Oh yeah.
FF8's final boss theme I think was quite good, but its regular boss theme, Force Your Way, is just sick. It's so good.
I really like the remixed boss theme in Streets of Rage 2 when you get to Mr. X.
Oh yeah, Mr. X's theme, the Streets of Rage 2 version. Yeah, that one's very good.
It's really
I also good. Rather like Maxman, the theme when you fight Shiva.
Yeah, yeah.
Like do 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 do. Like it's very like get ready. Like it's very tense for a little while because you know he's gonna pull some
I might
shit.
even like to turn this into a themed episode one of these times. Like maybe we could play some.
Oh, absolutely.
Some music from some classic games and be like, this is like. I want to do some research because like I can't think of too many off the top of my head. You know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. You know what's a really good poignant one actually is I don't think you have heard this one, but Lady Estrella, the boss of World 5 in Demon Souls.
Yeah, I don't know
that's
that
like the most obvious track in the game. This is where the game is just telling you should feel bad for fighting this boss.
I mean, the music, the final battle theme in Shadow of the Colossus, Jesus, like
a lot of the. Well, no, that is true. Some of the themes are a little more uplifting, but the final one, yeah, and like
you just feel sad.
Well, what really gets me about that particular track is how the theme always changes when you climb the Colossus. Mm-hmm. Like the song is usually kind of muted. Like I don't know if I should be here. But when you latch onto the Colossus, it's that big like da na 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 na. But like with the final boss of Shadow of the Colossus, the music doesn't change at all. Like you still feel bad. So it's like, well, that's no good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other tracks because I mean, there's got to be like 1,000 Sega tracks. Oh, you know what's kind of iconic? It's not one of my favorites, but it's in my head forever. Is the Ninja Turtles in Time boss theme?
Oh. Like so good.
Like it's just a lot of fun.
It's
very good. It's very good.
Gideon's theme in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
I don't know that one.
It's so good.
Baten Kaido's had some pretty good ones. The very last track in the game, Violent Storm. It's one of those games where the final boss is kind of like, you've done the hard part, now just finish the job here, but his track is a banger. Like it's just all right.
Demon Souls has a really good last battle theme too.
Does it?
Very poignant. Yeah, while you're fighting the final guy in Demon Souls.
Did you ever beat Demon Souls?
Yeah.
Not Dark Souls? I know you beat Dark Souls.
I meant Dark Souls. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, Dark Souls is poignant. You really should be fighting that guy. That's not a feels bad song, but it's more like this guy is clearly a shell of his former self song.
Mm-hmm.
In Demon Souls, it's not the final boss, but you feel bad the whole time. In Dark Souls, you don't feel bad, but you're like, oh, I kind of thought you'd be more impressive. Because the entire game, the environments and the characters, it's all about like former glory. Gwyn was a fucking badass. When you finally meet him, he still fights hard, but you're like, oh.
How about like we like a lot of games that are basically boss rushes, like Fury. Like every single boss battle is fucking epic.
The second theme in Fury, I don't remember the names because a lot of the song names are really weird.
This is the blind one. The blind boss.
Oh god, who was the blind? Oh, yeah, the one who's just raging at the walls.
Yeah.
Yeah, her track is incredible. Also, the one who has those little drones fighting alongside her and she wields a sniper rifle, her track's also very, very good. Actually, the first fight in the entire game is like one of my favorite tracks. I love that one. I can't. What's his name? The Chain. Everyone has like a
I
weird
never
name.
got that far. I never got that
the first
far.
guy in the entire game.
Oh, I beat the first.
You never
two.
started the game. You know that's one of my favorite tracks.
Gotcha.
The last track in the game, all the tracks are good, but the first one is just first one's so good. I could have sworn. Well, actually, like just insert Mega Man X boss here. Or
yeah,
well, not really boss. The boss tracks are all the same, but the level themes. I guess it doesn't count as boss themes. But the tracks are so good all throughout because every level is building up to like it's this boss's kind of aesthetic.
I think this kind of counts, but the Ace Attorney games, like when you finally get towards the end of the trials and it's like going back and forth, like that
like
music is
sort of
so good. Theme. Yeah, it's so good.
Like Danganronpa when it does its like DDR like track for some of those things when you're doing the super debates at the end, like all right. Or actually even just the class trial theme when it gets started, when it just kicks in. I don't know if you'd call it a boss theme, but that hit me right away. What else is some really good stuff? There's a ton going on.
Yeah, I'm pretty played out for the moment, but
yeah, like how many freaking games are there, right?
Yeah, it's just I can't remember off the top of my head.
Chrono Cross is some sick
actually,
ones.
Here we go. The Sonic 1 Robotnik battle music.
Oh, the gloomy one?
Yeah, it's so good.
Actually, no, wait a minute. If you want to talk about Sonic music, I think I've showed you this before. Sonic 3D Blast, specifically the Saturn version, that Robotnik theme is legitimately entertaining, and it's like tense the whole time, and it has like, I doubt it's real, it's probably MIDI, but it has like a part where an organ kicks in. It's like for Robotnik, for Sonic the Hedgehog, really? But it's like, oh shit, when you first hear it, it's really, really good.
Have you ever heard the Sonic CD Japanese boss music?
Actually, it's pretty
really
similar
good.
with the like that laugh. Yeah, the Saturn 3D Blast has that going on too. It's very similar.
I love
actually, that. I don't know if this counts as a boss theme. I'm fudging this one, but if you want to talk about Sonic CD, Stardust Speedway, just the level theme, but when you're racing against Metal Sonic, so it's kind of a boss, not really, kind of, but the whole gimmick of the level is you're racing Metal Sonic, and if you lose, you die. The Japanese theme, I think it's for the bad version because there's like good future, bad future, past. Like there's a lot of variations, but I think the bad future that's really good. The Japanese version, Japanese and European version about that. Both soundtracks are good, but the Japanese one with the weird synthesized like it's like it sounds like it's almost a human voice, possibly. It's very, very good. Also, like weird things that aren't bosses but are when you race against Screech, like the not Squawks character in Donkey Kong Country 2, like the race music.
What? Yeah, I know nothing about that.
Yeah, that's like the second to last level in the game, or like the third to last level, where it's Screech's Sprint, or it's called something like that, but you're Squawks, and you have to race Screech in like a bramble maze level, and it's a race, and you're like, oh no. So that's pretty tense. Like, it's kind of easy to cheese it. There are lots of barrels you could shoot yourself to make faster, but it's pretty scary when you first play it, and it's kind of scary on replays.
Wow.
That's a good one. Yeah, I don't know. I keep thinking final bosses, but even regular bosses, like Streets of Rage 1's regular boss theme with a like that kind of background chanting, sort of. As much as you could call it chanting for a Genesis game, that was super catchy.
Well, we should wrap things up here because we're getting a little long in the tooth. But
Probably,
I said, I really do want to explore this in a future topic. So definitely going to keep that in our back pocket here. That is the show for this week. We want to thank all of our fans who contributed questions and comments. This was a great week here.
One last thing I'll throw in.
Oh yeah. Please.
Just about every single level in the game, if you technically of Cuphead,
Oh yeah, that's true.
Except for like the run and guns, but those are bangers too. I particularly like Werner Vermin, like the little rat guy. It just, that song kicks in real quick.
Yeah, I don't know that one yet.
He's in World 3 or
Oh,
Island
okay.
3.
Gotcha.
He's very, very good.
Please keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own via the YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. Helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. Also, you can catch us on Tuesdays on our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in our lives. Finally, you can friend me on vysethebold on pretty much everything.
And you could follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, or getting in on exclusive, exclusive, on conversations with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
All right, everybody. We'll catch you soon on Tuesday.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.